So, hi everybody, and welcome to Friday's episode of Level Up. Today it's episode 175. Who would have thought? 60 minutes of live Q&A where your questions really do drive the show. Adriana is going to be over in the social chat, so do please let her know your name and, of course, the city from where you're joining. She's going to post some links into the chat, and then you'll be able to vote up the questions that you would most like answered, and of course for you to be able to add your own. Now, if your question is selected, then your name's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show, and quite right too. Get your questions in early, please, for today's episode, as it's always going to be a busy one as we talk about projects and change and projects and so on. Now, it's an interesting quote, a memorable moment from the movies, and Winston Churchill's character, at least the actor that was playing Winston Churchill, said, "You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth." And perhaps one of the best lines from that film, The Darkest Hour. But like much of the script, it really was a dramatization. It was a work of fiction. But I can relate at least to that feeling of hopelessness when change is genuinely unmanaged, very high risk, and of course, impactful on individuals, teams, and organizations. I would say that we are all change managers. It's simply the degree of scope and scale of what we do that varies, whether it's our personal life or our working life that's impacted. So to help out how we figure out how to build our careers, learn more about change management, and get back on the front foot of this kind of stuff, we have an amazing panel joining us today. So let's jump in and meet them all. Jackie Hewett is a senior PPM consultant over at QA Limited here in the UK, where she really does work with her corporate clients to design and deliver bespoke project and program solutions, focusing on change, I think it's fair to say, as that's one of her areas of great expertise. She excels in managing high-stake change delivered at real pace. So welcome back to the panel, Jackie. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Nick. Great introduction to the topic. I couldn't agree more. And change is massive for us at QA at the moment. We're seeing a lot of demand in this area.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, we're going to tap into that knowledge very shortly. Sam Jurawan is the director, of course, of the Change Managers Collective, and he's worked across industries as diverse as travel, logistics, commercial organisations, advertising, and so on. Always focused, I would think it's fair to say, on building communities of practice and ensuring his clients are always enabled, elevated, and left in a better place. Welcome back, Sam. Great to have you on the panel.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's great to be back with Level Up, and what a fantastic topic. Hopefully we can inspire some people to consider a career in change management. That would be lovely.
Most definitely. David McCreery joins us today. He's a consultant, of course, with Althris, who coach and mentor project managers and their sponsors. Is really his specialism rather. He has a practical and controlled approach, I think it's fair to say, which inspires others and brings them confidence in a sea of uncertainty. So welcome back to Level Up, David. Great to see you again.
Thank you very much, Nick, and delighted to be here with the gang. Looking forward to the discussion. I think change is all around us. We're going through significant changes in most of the organizations that we work with, and a little bit of help and thought on this is great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed. Ket Patel joined us. He is, of course, a change and business consultant with Marlowe Consulting. He's a master practitioner with the Change Management Institute, who APMG partner with for our qualifications, a passionate educator and advocate for exemplary practice in change management. He works to push the boundaries on advancing the profession. Welcome back to Level Up, Ket. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be back, and I really, really love this topic. Can't wait to get involved in it. I'd also like to just say I'm the new founder of a community called Change Reactions, which is hoping to get more people to consider change right from the moment of leaving college or university, and even transition. So this is a really great topic. I'm really pleased to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, we'll try and get a link out to the audience for you. If you let us know a link to that, then we can put that out into the social chat for everybody. There's quite a few folks already joining us, so we'll do that momentarily. Adrian Pyne completes our on-camera panel today. You may remember that Adrian is an accomplished author of books, including things like Agile Beyond IT, and he's also a fellow. Thank you, Adrian. Just happened to have one available. And he's also a fellow of the UK Association for Project Management, where he has actively been building community with energy and purpose for many years. For Adrian, I would say that agility is his passion. And of course, his experience and enthusiasm excite and delight his clients in equal measure. So welcome back to Level Up, Adrian. Great to have you today.
Thank you very much, Nick, and really pleased to be with this panel. And I'm completely with Samuel, sort of developing, the younger professionals. I love doing that. I do a little bit of teaching at business schools, and it's just incredible when you get sort of the energy and you see the interest in the younger professionals coming through. And it's good to help a little set them on a good path.
It's certainly true, isn't it? You get that real kind of warm, fuzzy feeling, actually, in helping other people. And certainly the change management professional community is one of those who do give their time most generously. So totally agree with that. Our question master for today panel is Charlotte Miller. She's joining us from Bradford, I think it is, or at least near Bradford, up in the very beautiful county of Yorkshire, in the UK. Welcome back to Level Up, Charlotte. Great to see you.
Thank you. I've had a couple of weeks off, and I've missed Leveled Up, I must say, missed presenting, and here I am.
Okay, all right then. Well, let's jump straight into it. It's been certainly a summer of change, if you are a weather forecaster, in the UK at any rate this year. Very unpredictable. But let's just jump straight into our questions. Charlotte, if we can do, and have our first question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We have a question. Our first question that's received the most votes is from one of our panelists, Adrian. Adrian asks, what are the key responsibilities of a change manager?
All right, panel. So where would we begin with this, with key responsibilities, if you like? Ket, why don't you start us off, and then we'll hear from Sam.
Lovely, thanks, yeah. So I want to start off really simply. I think I remember reading a couple of times through some of the questions where people were like, there's so many definitions of what a change management is and what it does. And someone I was talking to a while back kind of really helped cement something in my mind, which was sort of two sides of a coin. And that coin has on one side getting the business ready. So that could be any action that helps people prepare for what's about to happen. That's a nice, really simple business readiness. And then the other side of that is, well, once they've got what the change is, whether it's a new system or working in a new way, is actually, can they adopt it? Are they getting the ongoing support to reinforce what we want them, how we would like them to work, in the systems we'd like them to work? So for me, the kind of key responsibilities of a change practitioner is, are we getting the business ready, and are we helping the business adopt? And I love that because it's so simple and everyone can relate to it. So I've been using that quite actively with people, especially trying to introduce it more simply to people.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sam, your thoughts, and then we'll go to Jackie.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with what Kate is saying, as in our job is to understand and also ensure the business is ready. I think an additional responsibility of a change manager is going to be about thinking once the change is implemented or adopted within an organization, a change manager needs to put in the mechanisms that surround that change so to make sure the benefits are actually realized and the change is cemented within the organization in the long term. Because often what happens with change is that it can be adopted in the short term, and then you do see some benefits, which are just natural causes from change. But in order for when a change manager is involved, they can really ensure that that change is there for the long term to stick with people. So I think that's a very key responsibility for a change manager.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, about who needs to be present beyond the classic final phase of a project, and the change management role is actually one that's very, very important to realize those benefits, which often follow, at least in terms of timescale, when the project wraps up. So very good. Thank you, Sam. Jackie, your thoughts, and then David.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's already been said, but building on it, I see change management in a couple of ways. Building that bridge between the project, delivering the output, and the business, and making sure that both sides are aware of what each other are doing, because often that's missing, and building sort of awareness and capability and educating people within their organisation about what change properly involves.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. And David, your thoughts, and we'll go to Adrian.
Yeah. Look, I think one of the things I'd kind of like to add to Jackie's point there is that I think a key responsibility of the change manager is to bring people with you. And it's to get people to have a feel for the change and to get people energized around the change, excited by the change. And I think that's really, really key, to bring that energy and the awareness, and that's so people aren't just feel like the change is being put upon them, but that they actually really feel like they're part of the change and they can affect the organization through change and through change management. For me, that's a really key responsibility of the change manager, to test the water within the organization and make sure people are coming with us as we go through the change.
I love that point that you make, because we often talk about this in fairly dry fashion, as though preparing the organization for the solution is something that, it's kind of like, we do this and so on. But energy and enthusiasm are so critical to how is it perceived and how is it adopted, and are we embracing it and making the very best, of every single opportunity? Completely agree with that. Thank you, David. Adrian, and then we'll go to Kat.
Yeah. Again, building on what the panel has been talking about, I want to take a slightly different take, and that is talk about responsibilities versus accountabilities. Our profession is often more art than science, so there's no hard and fast thing about what a change manager is. They can be anything from also incorporating the champion, sponsor, senior responsible owner. They could have that level of accountability. But I've also been in many organizations where you've got the person who is, say, the sponsor, and the buck stops there. But they've got that accountability because they're the most senior person in the organization, and they're given that, but they may not have a clue about how to lead delivery of change. So very often a change manager can have the responsibility of, in effect, on a day-to-day basis, doing the sponsor's job and delivering the change. And sometimes that might even incorporate itself in parallel into the role of a program manager. Sometimes it's an intermediary. It can vary. If you like, there's agility with a small a in there, and it's about adapting the role in the right way for that change and in that organization and in that organization's culture. Anything from hand-holding to a very major leadership and accountable position.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you have somebody who is explicitly labeled as, leading a change initiative. And then you have other situations where it is implicit in each of us that we adopt the best practice around managing change, because we might be the only person in that workshop on that day, in that meeting, in that roundtable, in that discussion with key stakeholders and colleagues. And it's up to us to provide that situational change leadership in order for colleagues to be able to get on board with things. So very much agree with you. Kat, final thoughts on this, and then we'll go to social.
Yeah, lovely. I think just something that is probably optional for a lot of change managers, but Adrian and Samuel really kind of made me think to bring up is we're also got quite an important responsibility to be advocates and capability builders in others as part of our role. And what made me think of it when Samuel was talking is I wouldn't consider necessarily myself to have responsibility for making sure the organization fully realizes the benefits. I would want to be able to make that a manager's role within operations to continue to reinforce and embed and adopt. In order to do that, I've got to build capability in managers as well to understand how to do that. And I think that's where, Adrian was also talking. Sometimes the organization doesn't have leadership capability, the change capability it needs, but it doesn't also want to rely on people coming externally or intermittently as it's needed, right? To build an agile organization, we need to kind of reinforce it as a core set of skills in almost everybody. So I think an important role change managers can play, but don't always, is building capability in others as you go along your journey with the organization.
Yeah, very well said indeed. And that enabling and uplifting of others so that they know not just how to deal with, a copycat situation, but also, for them to be able to cope with brand new situations that they will face, as a team leader or as a, mid-career manager or even in the C-suite. It's very, very important. So thank you very much. What a great question from Adrian, kind of starting us off today on our journey as we look to the panel for their guidance. So let's jump over to social and welcome. We've got a huge range of people actually who are online today. First of all, a regular viewer, Suliat, thank you so much for joining us from Lagos over in Nigeria and West Africa, of course. And lovely to see the flag there. I don't know if that's a new thing or if it's just part of your profile. But anyway, thank you very much indeed for including that. It's fabulous. Babu joined us from over in Chennai in India. Great train service I've often taken across southern India to get across to Chennai from Bangalore. So great to have you online today, Babu. Thank you for joining us in your evening, actually. And also we've got Mohammed, who's joining us from Pakistan as well. Thank you very much indeed, my friend, for joining us there. Let's look at a couple of others. We've got quite an eclectic mix today. From Luengo in Uganda is Ernest, who's joining us. So Ernest, I'm looking forward to your questions popping up in the chat. Don't be shy, my friend, just pop in there. And also thank you as well. We're getting some really good emoticons of flags today as well. So thank you for including those. They bring a little bit of colour and sparkle, don't they, to level up. And Boitumelo, I think, from Gaborone in Botswana. Thank you very much indeed. And apologies to you, my friend, if I've made a complete hash of pronouncing your names. It's always good fun listening to Nick mispronouncing other people's names, but there we are. We'll do our best with them. Thank you very much for joining. Put your questions into the panel, and then, of course, your name will appear at the credits at the end of the show. Charlotte, I can see that we have questions stacking up, so we best press on. Let's take our next question, please.
Yeah. Can I just say a quick hello to Babu? I spoke to him earlier this morning. So hi, Babu. Thank you for joining. Next question is from Alan Peterson. Should I be a change manager or a change leader? And is there a difference?
Okay. David, why don't you start us off and then we'll hear from Adrian.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question. And, there's no hard and fast rule around this. But, we need to understand what the difference between management is and leadership is. We want everybody to be involved in leadership, and leadership is about leading people. For me, management is more about process. So a change manager is about putting the process in place, whereas leadership is about bringing people with us. And I think a change manager is a role that has to have leadership and change leadership. But we want much more people to be change leaders within an organization and even have bottom-up leadership. Everybody taking the responsibility for little acts of change within an organization. So for me, should I be a change manager or a change leader? I think everybody should be a change leader. I think we should try and create change leadership in everybody. But to manage the process, it's a smaller cohort of people. That would be my angle on it.
Okay, excellent. I love that notion of each of us taking responsibility for that little incremental change, that little small step of change. Really great one. I've made a note of that. Thank you very much, David. Adrian, your thoughts, then we'll hear from Sam.
Absolutely. Interesting, wasn't it? Was it Gandhi who said, "Be the change you want to be"? So I think maybe David was sort of thinking that, and I'm with him completely. Slightly different tack I'm going to take on it is. Bear in mind, it's kind of the theme today is sort of becoming a change manager and therefore building your capability. I have this private sort of view of how a level of capability builds up. First of all, I better explain that. I have a little equation which I've said on one or two panels before that it's a faux equation. So the capability someone has is a combination of whatever natural talent you've got, plus knowledge, plus experience, plus judgment. So over the period of time, you can build on your natural talents by increasing the other three. And where this is relevant to this question is, I think people can go from, you can train anyone to manage something, but then when they've got a higher level of capability, that puts them then into a leadership level. And my personal view is that you then go above there into a true professional, is someone who's kind of gone through a management level and even a leadership level and just has a level of capability. That's a little bit like, I think in UK and Europe, you used to have the idea of apprentices, journeymen, and masters, and I think it's kind of that kind of progression. So if anyone in the audience is thinking about where their careers are going in change management, they might want to think about what are the different levels of capability at different stages in that career.
It's certainly an interesting equation, isn't it? And one that I think you can amplify different parts of your career in different ways. So we might come back to what are the interventions that might help you either gain the knowledge that you need or indeed the experience that you're looking for in order to be able to inform your decision making and so on in a little while. So thank you very much indeed, Adrian. Sam, your thoughts, then we'll go to Jackie.
Yeah, so I'll focus on the first part of the question if I can. So should I be a change manager or a change leader? If you are this, I think this is just one opinion that most people are going to share, which is if you are a leader of people, you should be a change leader, as in it is your responsibility to guide your team, to guide people who look up to you, to be that leader. And as a change leader, change is scary, and it's often something that people are not comfortable with. I think it's an association that most people do not like change. They prefer to keep things in the status quo. So your responsibility as a leader is to be a change leader. Now, should you be a change manager? It really depends on your scope and responsibility, because again, a change manager is different from a leader because the manager is the one who is creating the approach, creating the planning that surrounds a change. And again, they're the ones who are kind of setting how the change is going to be cascaded down to different groups of stakeholders and people. So should you be a change manager? I hope you want to be, because it's a great career path, but you should definitely be a change leader if you are leading people.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Great advice there from Sam. Jackie, your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Kat.
I think this is a really interesting question, and a lot's already been said on it. But leadership, I would see more as a skill or a capability. And leadership cuts into many different job titles. So I would say leadership is a skill or a capability, whereas a change manager is often a role or a job description, isn't it? You are actively managing the change. And in any one single change, there might be many leaders associated or involved, depending on the scope and the nature of the change. And I'll just throw in one little sort of fact, actually. Forbes magazine in 2021 cited change management as being the most important leadership skill today. So that's sort of like cutting across and contradicting a bit of what I've said. But when they say change management, I'm thinking they're taking it as a capability. Yeah, but I think change leadership, a capability in many jobs, change management specifically a job focused on change.
Okay, thank you so much indeed. And I agree with that. It is a conundrum, isn't it? What fits inside the other is change inside leadership inside change. You can cut it and slice it and dice it lots of different ways. Kat, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in the round, like you said, it's a complicated topic. But I would say if you want to be an effective change manager, you have to also, it goes part and parcel being an effective change leader. You can't do change management effectively if you haven't got the leadership skills to drive change, to create the environment for change to happen. And when we think about what's the difference, I think change managers have a set of functional responsibilities. I create a change impact assessment, I create a communications plan. Leaders use their inherent capabilities as behaviors, their empathy, their ability to be pragmatic, and they use that to create the environment to enable people to make changes for themselves. So one is about you as a person and what motivates you and what drives you and how you use that to create motivation in others, which is the leadership element. But then the practical bit is, okay, so how are we going to do that work? And that's where the manager bit is. And I think they're inextricably linked, and you can't be effective without having the leadership skills to affect change.
It's a really great question, isn't it? These questions seem simple at first glance, and then they prove actually to be much deeper than perhaps we might imagine. Thank you very much indeed, Ket. Thank you, panel. Some brilliant answers for that. Really excellent. Let's turn our attention. Thank you, Suchitra, as well, for joining. It's Friday evening in India, so we've got quite a good following over there actually today. So thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate it. Suchitra, of course, a regular question master on Level Up herself. Let's move on. Charlotte, if we can, we'll take our next question, as I'm seeing lots of live questions coming through in the chat, in English, in French, in a range of different languages, actually. So great to see our international community responding.
Thanks, Nick. We do have a live question that's next. It's from Nachita, live LinkedIn viewer. How can an organisation strike a balance between maintaining continuity and embracing innovation during periods of change?
All right. So how do we strike that balance? Do we forge ahead and leave people behind us, Adrian? Or what practical advice would you give to Nishita to balance those two things out?
It's a tricky one, because over my 30 year career, one thing I've noticed very, very often is that in organizations, project-based activity is almost like a virus compared with the business as usual. And organizations try their very best unwittingly to actually kill projects, programs of change off, because many of the ways in which projects and programs and even portfolios operate run counter to the business operational processes and even culture in an organization. So there is a huge tendency, and even someone who is the sponsor of change has a day job, and very often that day job is the thing they're being measured on, and they're not being performance measured on delivering a change. So one thing I've done with some clients in the past is that we've looked at how you change that a view of what senior level roles are in an organization in relation to their operational day-to-day roles or business as usual roles versus change roles. And obviously not going to no time to go into that today, but it is an incredible balancing act. But it is partly cultural as well. And in fact, if you look at places like Japan, they don't have, generally speaking, this concept of change. After all, it's where Kanban came from, and they see change as something which is part of business as usual. They evolve best practice, they evolve new ways of working, and which is, as I say, is exactly where Kanban came from in the latter part of the 1940s in the automotive industry. So it's a huge topic, this one, but you cannot divorce it from the organization and culture and the operations of an organization.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adrian, for starting us off. Jackie, let's pick up that baton then and run with it, and then we'll hear from David.
Thank you. This is another great question, isn't it? And there's so much to say. both are critical. You've got to keep the lights on. You've got to keep the business as usual going. But equally, we can say that organizations that don't change and don't innovate and just sit on their laurels die. So we have to do both. It's essential that we do both. How to get that balance? It is a bit of an art form. It's about making the right choices, I would say, not having too many initiatives. I was speaking to a client literally this morning having that problem. They've got too many initiatives running, so everything kind of grinds to a halt. So it's about having good business cases that help you weigh up one change initiative against another. So making sure you're picking the right ones strategically to focus on. And then there's another bit of a question in here also is about when things roll out and when an initiative goes live and the impact you are then going to have on the business as usual. So tools and techniques and things like heat maps help you understand, when things are going live. Is this the right quarter to put this one live in? Is it too much for that particular division to cope with? There's so much more to say, but I need to leave some space for some of my other analysts.
That's quite all right. I think there is temptation sometimes amongst senior management to try and, measure their own success by the pace at which they're trying to drive through the organization. And the risk with that is that you might have a lot of things on a list getting ticked off, but do you actually really bring the whole organization with you in a meaningful way? So it's a great summary. So thank you, Jackie. David, your thoughts? Then we'll hear from Kat.
Yeah, my first thought is that Adrian and Jackie have stolen all my ideas. But besides that, I think it is about pace. It is about pace and understanding the pace that the organization is capable of working within. And I'm going to go back to the people, understanding the pace that the staff and perhaps customers can deal with. And I think that's a very much of a change manager's job, is to be able to see what is the pace that we can run this at. And that means that we can't go into it, too quickly. I mean, a project manager's job is actually to create, expedite a project. A change manager is to kind of go, yeah, hold on a second now. What is the pace that is sustainable and that this organization can take on? For a change manager, there's a lot behind that. There's a lot of skills and knowledge I think you need to tap into to understand what that pace is. I think that's the key thing that I'd be thinking about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, David. Kat, your thoughts? Then we'll hear from Sam.
Yeah, I think I'm really just going to repeat what my colleagues have said. And I think that's transparency. What is the entire volume of all the things we want to get done? Making choices. When you make something transparent, you can choose what you do. And I think that's really important because we don't have enough capacity to do all the things we want. So we have to prioritize. So we have to make choices. And then those choices lead us to have to weigh them up in some term of risk, right? So for me, I'm always talking to line managers, middle managers about how they're going to cope with the volume of business as usual they have, plus the change. And I think about how are we managing up? How are we managing the people above us to say, well, help me make a choice. What's more important to you? Is it to keep business as usual 100% intact, or are you willing to introduce a level of risk so they can create some space to bring on this new change that will take the organization forward? When you can bring transparency, choices, and risk mitigation to the conversation, all of a sudden you create space to choose. And I think that's where that dialogue, as was also just being said, is a change manager's role is to create that dialogue and create that transparency.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it, for everybody to feel like there is that, to coin the most recent phrase around it, the psychological safety to be able to manage up the organization in that fashion and to collectively sometimes reprioritize, based on that something that you thought may have been straightforward actually turned out to be a little trickier and is taking a lot more resource perhaps than you initially thought. So excellent. Thank you so much, Kat. Sam, final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and the panel has given some fantastic answers, honestly. Kate, you actually saw my last part, which was about capacity, so there we go. But I think, but no, that's okay. But I think maybe one thing, just to kind of understand that business continuity is something that's essentially, it has to be kept. And what a change manager will do is we will work around the fact that business continuity cannot be shifted any way backwards. So what you want to assume when it comes to embracing innovation is, I like to use something during the assessment, which is the change formula, to really assess what are the impacts and what are your opportunities, I would say, as in to try and get people, as in to assess the dissatisfaction with what's going on, to assess current capacity. And then that will kind of give you a framing for how much you can push this innovation and getting people to adopt and embrace change. So it is really a balancing act on scales, but the one that can't move is sacrificing business continuity. So that's the only piece of advice I can give.
Thank you very much indeed. So the evolution continues, Nishita, rather than purely abandoning, the BAU in favour of chasing the new thing, whatever that new thing happens to be. Totally agree with you, Shanice, online this afternoon from Wales, talking about, the amazing conversation. And there's a fantastic conversation going on online, by the way, as well, not just from the panelists, but also from the audience. So do chip in, give us your thoughts, all right, as well as the questions. Audience online, do share what your thoughts are on the answers that the panel are giving. If you agree, and if you can add something into the debate, then please do so. We are all learning from each other, so we really appreciate that. Charlotte, we need to move on. We've got lots of questions to cut through.
Yes, we've got a live question that's come in from Amanda J. Chandler. What are the best methods for overcoming resistance to change, particularly from senior leaders?
Okay, Jackie, some practical suggestions for us.
Yeah. First thing is, I think, anticipate that there's going to be resistance. Is there ever a change without any resistance? Very, very unlikely. So expect it, look for it, trial solutions, trial some of your messaging early with key selected people and see what they say. Do your different stakeholder groups impact assessments, try and put yourselves in their shoes and or even empathy maps are a great technique, a great tool to try and get in their heads and anticipate. But I'm going to say one other thing, overcoming resistance. Sometimes the resistance is there for good reason. And sometimes people out there in the business may come up with something that you've not thought of, and you actually need to listen to it and deal with it rather than necessarily just overcome it. There are some nuggets in there that are really critical that you need to pay attention to.
I agree with that. It's not every bit of resistance is not a symptom and it's not a problem. It can actually be incredibly useful. Excellent. Thank you so much, Jackie. Kat, and then Sam.
Yeah, I think it was just building on Jackie's point, really, is that I don't really even like using the word resistance, right? There is a response to change, and understanding the root cause of that response is sometimes really superficial, I really genuinely don't like this and I don't think it's good for me, or there could be a deeper reason for that, which is sort of masked by the outward behaviors. And I think it's really important when you see, especially with senior leaders, you have open and honest conversations around what is driving the perceived negative view about the change that's being asked of them. Why aren't they supporting it? What more have they got going on? Really, again, to Jackie's point, really sort of using empathy to understand where they're at. And I also think, to Jackie's point, not everybody will join or jump on board or come along, and you have to make a choice as to whether the role of that senior leader is critical, and if it is, what can we do about it to kind of perhaps not the right way to phrase it, but dampen it down or manage the impact of that to the wider program, because you don't have limitless time to try and convince everybody, but it's important that you do understand what the root cause of that pushback is, and see what is within your kind of grasp to try and support and tackle and de-risk from the change's goal.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Yeah, I think everything's been really summed up already, but one thing is you've specifically called out senior leaders as a point of resistance, and I think one of the best things that you can do is to always frame the change or the conversation with the highest possible sort of direction. So, for example, a lot of companies will have OKRs, they'll have their roadmaps, they'll have initiatives which are company-wide or organizational-led. And usually resistance from senior leaders is because the change is negatively impacting their particular silo within the business. So framing a change that's of a higher, I don't want to say the word authority, but it kind of is authority, is going to help them to adopt and actually accept the fact that this change is maybe negatively impacting them overall for the business. And if they're a senior leader, they should be able to understand your point when it comes to that.
Yeah, really good point. Well made. Thank you so much, Sam. Adrian, and then David.
Okay, I'm going to kind of get into almost the negative side of things here. Especially we're talking about major transformational change for an organization. That is something that should be coming straight out of the strategy for the business. Therefore, the senior leadership should all it's their job to make sure it happens. But frankly, that's cloud cuckoo land. The reality is that not all senior business leaders always act in the best interest of the organization if it conflicts with their own best interests. So you do sometimes get real opposition from very senior, very influential people, not for any other good reason than their own best interest, especially if it could be damaging to their power, their organization, their prestige, their jobs even in the organization. And sometimes those folk have to be managed. It's actually why I believe in stakeholder management as opposed to stakeholder engagement, which I I prefer to engage with people and bring them with me if I'm leading change. Sometimes you can't do that, and you have to look for other techniques to actually manage that resistance. So my point really is actually saying sometimes there really is resistance and it's not for a good reason. And sometimes you just have to act in certain ways to deal with that resistance. There you go.
Thanks very much indeed. Some really strong points. And I completely agree with you, Adrian. There are moments here where, people need to get with the program, and if they don't, it's going to burden the organization with a latency that it might not be able to afford. David, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, my final thought is conversation. I think for me, the best method to overcome resistance is to create and lead conversations. And from my senior leaders, I want them to actually lead the conversation. If people are articulating or transparent, to use one of the guys' words from earlier on, that allows the conversation to go out there, that we can actually speak about our resistance and share our resistance. So for me, the best method is conversation. And as a change manager, you need to get those conversations going early and lead the conversation and get other leaders in the organization to lead the conversation in the right direction. That's my 2 pence worth.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And final thoughts on that, Adrian. I know that you're waiting to kind of come back in on this. Can you be brief with your final thought?
I'll be very brief. Completely with David on have conversation. Lots and lots of talk George Orwell better than war. Another Winston Churchill saying. But sometimes people will keep on wanting to have the same conversation to try and basically win their argument and destroy a change that they don't like, that they object to. And sometimes you just, again, have to say, no, enough. This is what the business is doing. You either support it or get out.
Yeah, there are those moments, aren't there, in careers where you really do need to decide which particular bus you're on. you need to jump on board and go on the journey, and work your way to the front and take over the steering wheel, perhaps a little later, but whichever way, if you're not on the bus, then you're going to get left behind. Mark Thomas, big shout out to Mark. Thank you for joining us over from Arizona in the US. Great to have you online today, Mark. Thank you so much for joining. Charlotte, we need to pick up the pace. We can fit in, I think, one or two more questions. So let's crack on and take the next question, please.
Thanks. Our next question is from Robert. We know Robert very well at APMG. Robert asks, how can we be sure change actually occurred?
So, is it locked in? What happened? The difference between the before and the after? Kat, I'm going to stir it up a little bit. Come to you first on this. Then we'll hear from Jackie.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the things change managers aren't particularly great with is trying to get a good basis for what does it look like now, measurable, and what does it look like at the end, so we can kind of show a difference. And I think that's where we need to spend some more time as practitioners and focus, is that we can only show a difference if we have something to compare it to. We can only do a change in practice if we've got an as is and a to be. So why is the same not true of how we measure the impact of what we're doing? So I'm really a keen advocate of looking with the business around some of the key performance indicators they're measuring, looking at how we're expecting them to change in the pursuit of the initiative that's underway, and making some guesses around what we think will happen to them as a result of the change. Where do those numbers go? Do we need to create new ones? So having that dialogue with the business around what we expect that to look like in some of the key ways we measure the performance is a really good starting point, where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think that's what sometimes is probably the scary bit for change managers, is thinking we have to come up with the measurements ourselves. And I think relying on sort of what is the business expecting and how do they measure that, it's a really good way to show that change has taken place. And also I think sentiment is really important. Do people feel good about what's happening? And often we hear very quickly when people don't feel good, but we also need to actively look for where people are feeling happy, joyous, and enjoying what is brought from the change once they've gone through it.
It's very important. A great deal of management time is spent looking for problems, or at least trying to solve the problems when they are raised in a timely fashion. And of course, that's super important. I just wonder if all of the wellness surveys that are being done around the world wouldn't show better results if we actually looked for the good things which are happening as well, and got a little bit of thought behind that, and ask better questions so that we could create a more balanced outcome. A survey is only ever as good as the question bank upon which it is based. Thank you very much indeed, Kat. Jackie, final thoughts on this, then we'll move on.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. Kat has pretty much stolen my thunder, because to me that was the obvious sort of thing. But almost to sort of turn that into a quote, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you've got there? You have to know your destination, otherwise you can't measure it. So, yeah.
It's very true, isn't it? Baselining this is so important. It doesn't actually take too long, but it's often just completely overlooked. Oh, well, we know what the BAU is. Well, you might know part of it, but you probably won't know all of it. And guess what? If it's a transformation, the end should be different, shouldn't it, than the beginning? So how different is that different going to be? And how will you actually go about measuring that difference? Super important. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you, panel. Charlotte, let's move on. We've got a stack of questions. We're going to try and cut through them pretty quickly in the last 5 minutes.
Snake. The next question is from a live viewer. Katsiana asks, I'm following an agile change management course now by Melanie Franklin. What do you think about agile change management, and do you practice agile change management?
All right. Okay. Well, David, I'm going to come to you, and then I want to hear from Adrian, please.
Yeah, look, agile, besides being a buzzword, we need to kind of be careful what agile change management means and where agile is coming from. Agile, for me, works best in small teams. And the minute you try and scale agile, you add complexity to it that makes it less agile. So We need to be kind of careful there. But for me, one of the angles that I kind of see as agile change management is a lot about bottom up change management. How do we get people to suggest, promote, and bring change from the bottom to the rest of the organization? So for me, that's really, really key, a key element. And when we've got that bottom up change management, that actually requires quite a lot of management. And quite a lot of thinking about how do we implement it, how do we drop the stuff that is not really in line with where the business is going. So I think it's really, really important. I do think the difficulty is the same difficulty with agile. Works great in small teams. Scaling it is the complexity around. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Adrian, and then Sam.
Goodness, I could be hours on this. I'll be seconds. David's brought a very good point. First, it depends what you mean by agile. Agility in in modern era started out in software, but it's long moved beyond software. So you can be agile at anything, right up to business agility, the very way in which your organization operates and its culture. And so it's important, first of all, to understand what agile you're talking about. If you're doing agile change, you need to have an organization culture that will support an agile way of working. That's really the key things to say. Apart from picking up another one, David. If we're talking about moving towards business agility or even change transformation agility, I have never seen an example, and I've been working in this area for nearly 15 years as a specialist now. I have never seen an example of bottom-up agile sustained. It can only ever be sustained as a culture when it's led and maintain from the top down. The great change guru Kotter is completely right about that.
Thank you so much, Sam. Change in an agile environment, and importantly, do we practice it?
Yeah, this is unlike Adrian. I'm not an expert in agile, so I won't pretend to be. Besides my course that I studied many moons ago, but in terms of from a change agile perspective, I have practiced it within a company before, and I did within an innovation lab, as in they had a secured group of participants from operations who were testing out different softwares and giving feedback and having each deployment being iterative. And honestly, it does work extremely well because you are able to build a much richer picture of where that product or where that piece of software has come from. And when you then go to cascade that change out further within the organization, you as a change manager feel much more secure having seen that process from start to finish and are able to really sell that across an organization who haven't had the opportunity to do that. So does change management work does agile change management work? I think it does, but I think it definitely needs to be set up in a very, very secure and correct way for actually to have some benefits realization.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I also want to give a shout out to somebody who's not on the panel today, but who has been on other occasions, who is Melanie Franklin, who is the author behind the Agile Change Agent certification that APMG run and so on. And one of the things here is to think about that continuous change. And in the classic agile, and to your point, Adrian, earlier on, it depends what discipline you see and whether it's agile as a philosophy or agile as a religion, if I could put it that way.
Neither.
We need so we need to kind of think about, how we dovetail in organizational change management into agile projects, programs, organizational agile transformations, these kinds of things. So do look that up. There's a really interesting couple of communities. We're going to send you some links in a moment, everybody, to different communities of practice. Do look up the continuous change community. Very worthwhile. they are all about thinking about change in an agile context. Okay, so very worthwhile having a look there. And we'll also give you some links in a little while to some of the other communities that we have been talking about earlier as well. All right, final question, and we're going to have to be super quick. Panel, if we're going to squeeze this one in. So Charlotte, let's take our final question for today.
Thanks, Nick. The last question for today is from a live viewer, Mohammed Abbas. What is one best practice in managing change?
Oh, okay. All right then. Jackie, you were the fastest finger first. Go ahead.
Difficult to pick just one. But if I'm forced to, I'm going to say it all has to start with the why. Keep your eye on the why. You can't sell it unless you know why you're doing it. So good vision and selling a good vision.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Keep your eye on the why. I quite like that. It's got a certain quality to it, hasn't it? Certainly memorable. Thank you so much. Kat, and then Adrian.
I'm going to go with a really important practical point of view, which is just be pragmatic. Every organization is very different. There is no one size fits all. As a change practitioner, you've got to look at the volume that's going on around you, the complexity, the people, and don't try and be like might want you to be, which is evangelical about the practice of change management. It is an important discipline, but be pragmatic. Bring pragmatism to everything you're doing in order that we can move the organization forward. We can do and achieve outcomes that are relevant to the business at a speed and a scale that they would like, right? So for me, it's about just being pragmatic as often as you can, and also fun. Bring some energy to it. I think you said it earlier, Nick, it's really important that we bring energy to this area.
Okay, thank you so much. Sam?
Yep. One best practice I would definitely say is to always remain adaptable. Change never runs in a straight line. I have managed changes where I've had so much time to think about what was going on and thought, oh yes, I've got it all planned out. I've got it perfect. This is going to run completely smoothly. It never does. And the point is this: if you remain adaptable when you're managing change, you can always make sure that you're giving the best possible chance for that change to be adopted by your end users. So if there's one thing you can practice that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. And then Adrian.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my thoughts around people. And I think it's to really understand the people involved in the change and to understand that the same change affects different people in different ways, even within the same team, even within the same, what you might think of the same profession. That it's very, very individual to individual people. And I think that's really important to understand how that change affects the individuals. And that's one I think that you need to tap into early in order to understand the prospects for the change that you're working with.
Okay, super ideas these, actually. Each has real merit, doesn't it? So we've got 5 out of 5. Adrian, your final best practice to consider.
Well, first of all, Sam got there before me on adaptability. Well done, Sam. So I'm going to just say, remember that pretty much any organizational change you do is going to consist of people aspects, process aspects, and technology aspects, and they all need to be integrated. And that's the thing. So integration, adaptability, brilliant.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you, Adrian. And one final thought from me is that I would kind of suggest to everybody in the audience today that I don't think that people do really fear change so much. What they lament is loss. So if you can think about that for a moment and think, how can what I do as a change manager help people preserve dignity throughout a change transformation program, then that could be a North Star to follow in not just what we do, but also how we might go about doing that. So just consider that a little. So very good. Well, wow, what an episode we've had. Kat and the rest of the panel, let's hear your closing remarks for today's show. Kat, we'll come to you first, and then we'll go to Adrian.
Yeah, closing remarks. I really enjoyed hearing all the different views from people. I think my passion is really to get more people interested in what we do as a profession, not to be evangelical about it. I've said that word once and already tried to mess it up. But it's really, for me, it's such an exciting career. You can inject a lot of fun into it. You can really help people not feel fear, but manage loss. And I think that's such a really important point. Thanks for raising it, Nick. So yeah, let's try and get more change managers out there. Let's get more people interested in change and being less fearful of it and more intrigued and curious by it.
Thank you so much indeed. Adrian and then David.
Okay. The vehicles for managing change for decades now and that have been evolving are project, program, and portfolio management. There's no need to reinvent them. There's every need to adapt them, be flexible with them, as Sam and the rest of the panel have pointed out. But please don't reinvent them and call them things like SAFE.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. I kind of agree with that. Thank you very much indeed. David and then Sam.
Yeah, look, I think in the current business environment, I think the pace of change has increased. The opportunity for change has increased, and I think even more recently that's even picked up with new technology jumps. So I think it's really important that we build the skills to help people through what I think is going to continue to be quite uncertain times for a lot of roles that we work in.
Thank you so much indeed. The pace of change indeed. We might come back to that in a moment. Sam, your closing remarks, please, then we'll hear from Jackie.
Yeah, it's been a great panel. Honestly, I love doing these anyway because I always get to learn so much from people who are so experienced. In terms of change management, personally speaking, I was once in a career where I wasn't really happy, and then luckily I found or stumbled upon change management, and it completely changed my life. So honestly, if you are considering a career switch or you're looking for something new, look into change management because it seriously is a very fulfilling career path for people.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Couldn't agree more with that. Super fulfilling. Jackie, your closing remarks, then we'll go to Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you. We've had so much great discussion today. And rather than picking out any one or two closing things about change, I'm going to say big up APMG, because I think I've been involved in a few, and I think this is the best discussion I've been involved in yet. They're getting better and better. You're changing and growing your community brilliantly. And what superb questions they've posed to us today. So thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jackie. I know there's a huge team behind this, and they will be delighted, with your feedback for us. So thank you so much for that. Charlotte, an eclectic mix of questions from pretty much all of the land masses around the world as well. Your thoughts on today?
It's been a fantastic show. I myself have been involved in several change projects throughout my career, and the panel have just been excellent. The viewers and the questions that they've submitted and the compliments, to echo Jackie, that the viewers are giving us in the chat on social media is just fantastic. We are about to deliver our second anniversary episode on the 18th of August. So thank you so much. We couldn't do it without our expert panelists or our viewers.
Absolutely right. And you are indeed the producers of the show, everybody who's online. Now, one person who's not online today, but perhaps by right does deserve the final thoughts on the pace of change, is the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who said around about 2,500 years or so, that roughly translated, you can't place a step in the same river twice. And what he meant by that was the water, of course, changes continuously. So I'm not sure about the pace of change being faster. that may have been really fast 2,500 years ago. I don't know. I suppose it depends which river you're in, really, and whether it's rained or not. Okay, all right, very good. So on that bombshell, we'll probably move on. Thank you so much to our panel on behalf of our producers online. Thank you very much to everybody who's been online today. You've done an amazing job. So thank you indeed. Now, over on our website, of course, you can search for the answers to all 175 episodes and the Connect series, all of our, continue your professional development interviews and podcasts and, develop your skills and so on. All of that content's on our website and it's all searchable for you. So do jump over there. More than 2,000 questions now from experts from around the world. And you can listen to the audio versions, of course, on your preferred podcast platform as well. Coming up on Monday, 8 a.m. UK time, we're going to be having a look at how to become a digital leader. That's on the 7th of August, 8 o'clock UK time, before turning our attention later on in the week to how to secure the coveted status, the aspirational status, if you like, of becoming a chartered project management professional, to give it its proper title. And that's at 2 p.m. here in the UK next Friday. You can, of course, watch us and join in and listen both on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So whichever your preferred platform is, please get along there and join in then. You can, of course, as well get a reminder for that second anniversary episode, which is on the 18th of August, by going to our YouTube channel. Give the video a like, please, and do subscribe to the show over there. We'll also send you a personal summary of kind of what's coming up. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks.